All right, so I wanted to make a video just to show you guys how I set my saddle up so that I'm comfortable, so that I can, shoot on all my sides the best as possible, and then also so that I can film at the same time. So the reason that I went to saddle hunting isn't necessarily because it's trendy or whatever. This is actually a way for me to pack in all of my camera gear that I need and have a running gun setup. Whereas before I could never do that. So I just want to talk a little bit about saddle comfort. So I feel like the first thing that turns guys off is they don't feel safe when they're up in the tree, or they don't feel comfortable when they're sitting up there for a long period of time. And I feel like both of those can be remedied. It's just a matter of how you're sitting in your tree. So first thing I want to say when it comes to comfort, most guys complain about the pressure on like their legs from the bottom part of their saddle. That's because of the angle that you're sitting. So a saddle is cupped. At least most of the newer ones have a little bit of a cup to them. And so you're gonna be most comfortable when your legs are at a 90-degree angle to your torso. So right now, I'm obviously not at a 90, but if I was to lower down to it now where I'm more in a sitting position, I just got so much more comfortable just by doing that. So that's one thing to take into consideration. Plus, I can lean forward now. If you do have a back strap, you can put it on to kind of help cinch you in there. And you can sit like this for a lot longer than you can sit up here. Another issue on top of guys not being comfortable is guys not feeling safe when they're up in the tree. And it's one thing when I am 2 feet from the ground and I'm swinging around and all this stuff, but I got up into a tree at, like 25, 30 foot. Let me tell you, like I'm used to tree stands, but I was nervous. So it's a totally different story when you're up in a tree and you're, messing around with all this gear. So what I found when I was in the tree that made me feel the most safe, the most comfortable, was always having 2 points of contact to the tree. So when I was just, feet on the platform like this, I didn't feel very safe. I felt much more safe when I had my knees up against the tree and I was sitting like this. I mean, that's all fine and good until you got to take your shot, and then you got to come back out, and then you're dealing with, a camera arm and all this. So if you're not moving and you're just staying like this, it's fine. But when you're trying to pivot around this way and that way, it gets a little bit nerve-wracking. The farther out you are, the more leverage you have to start swinging around, to lose your balance. This tree's leaning towards me actually. And I know everyone's like, well, you need to be on the other side of the tree. Well, yeah, but maybe you didn't think about it. Maybe you couldn't, and this was the best side of the tree to be on. But I got my bow here. So if I was to take a weak side shot, a lot of people are saying to pull yourself up and lean into the tether. And while you can do that, this doesn't feel comfortable. I don't get a lot of confidence when I'm doing this. Plus, what happens if he goes on, he loops around the back of my tree? Well, I'm all screwed up now. I can't just turn and shoot him. I've got to come back under, which granted, I don't have an arrow in, but if you had an arrow in your bow, it'd be almost impossible to do this move. What I like to do is pivot my hips when I'm turning from one side to the other. So I keep my bridge just long enough so that I can pivot all the way around one side, all the way around the other side. And so what I do is, without, adding the camera arm into the mix, if I just had my bow, I had a deer come off my weak side. Now I'm not gonna go putting my bow underneath of my tether and doing all this stuff. I'm just gonna take my bow off the hook, bring it right over the top, pivot my hips, come down, and I'm pretty much, it's just like I'm sitting in a regular lock-on tree stand. Like at this position, I can just, fall right into the tree, and I feel pretty safe. Like I'm hanging here essentially. And so, I can pull back, I can shoot anywhere around this tree, and I feel pretty comfortable. Compared to if I'm way out here and I'm trying to do that, I don't feel as safe. Same thing over here. If I would take a strong side shot, I'm gonna pivot my hips and come in here like this. And I'm gonna back up against the tree and I'll pivot around. So not only does it bring your silhouette down smaller, tighter up against the tree, but it just makes you feel more safe. I put my shoulder, I mount it on the right side of the tree so that it can wrap around this way That way when I'm filming, I can twist around like this to get all my strong side shots real easy. I got that idea from DIY Sportsman. It's very, very important how high you put your camera arm base. I put it right about knee height, just above knee height. And so for the reason for that is when you're standing out on your platform, this spot right here is the largest area distance from your body to the tree. So you have the most room to move your camera around. Say if you got to do something crazy like this and you're one hand in it and you can't get it to budge and you got your other hand on the bow, like you have the most room for error, the most room for play right here. Whereas if you get it too high, now you're up, you sacrifice a lot of space for movement. So that's one reason. The other reason is that when you go to shoot and say I pivot and I'm coming in here to shoot an weak side shot, I want to make sure that that arm is low enough to clear my cams when I pull back. So I want to make sure I can come into this tree, I can swing around, and my cam isn't going to hit that camera arm. I want to make sure it's low enough that I got that clearance. Another thing that I do to make my weak side shot easier, and if I don't want to come up against the tree like that, is my stick, I keep it on the left side of my platform. And I put the top of my stick at the same height as the base of my platform. When I pivot and I come around, instead of having to just, hang on my platform, I can just take a step back. And now I've got 2 feet on the platform and stick, and I can stand the complete opposite side of the tree as the deer, and I have plenty of stability. So maybe you're on a noisy tree and you don't want to come into this tree because you don't want the bark to make noise. You can do that too. My bow is obviously on my, the side where I'm going to be picking it up, but you want to make sure that you have it back far enough, your hook far enough back, so that when you do, pivot back around, it's not going to get in your way or anything like that. So if my backpack's over here, I can still get my bow up there and shoot behind the tree and all the way down the weak side, but it's not getting in my way. And since it's connected to the end of my strap, I can just bring it around the front, and I have access to it, throw it around the back when I'm done. All right, so if a deer's coming in, as a review, I'm gonna stand up, pull up my tether a little bit so I'm in that working stance, take my bow off, grab my camera arm, rotate around. If the deer starts coming out in front of me, pivot my hips, reach around, and I can still shoot anywhere up in there, anywhere in there. If I pivot back around, that's my strong side shot. Weak side shot, same thing. Stand up, pull my tether up so I'm in a better working stance. Take my bow off, grab my camera arm, pivot my hips, come in, and I'm ready to shoot. Of course, if he's behind the tree, I'm gonna have to pivot out a little bit like that. When it gets to this spot, I can take my foot and I can step back onto my sticks for more support. So hopefully that helped you out a little bit, lower that tether, get a little more comfortable, raise it back up when you got deer coming, wear some knee pads, make sure you know where you're putting your base as far as height wise, and you should be able to, film some stuff out of your saddle pretty effectively. I'd like to hear if you guys got any questions, or maybe you do stuff a little bit better, a little different, makes it a little bit easier. This is what I do for self-filming. I think self-filming, you have to do things a little bit different than everybody else. What works for everybody might not work for you. So hopefully this helped out somebody.